This easy and effective Thanksgiving turkey recipe is brought to you by Squarespace, the easy and effective way to make and run a website. Get 10% off your site by using my link and code in the description. If you're looking for an efficient way to make a classic roast turkey with gravy, this is how I do mine. I use only one vaguely unusual cooking technique. I keep dishes to a minimum, my white meat is juicy, my dark meat is falling apart, and my gravy is rich and flavorful. I'll show you how I carve, which is optimized for efficiency and ease of eating, and also how I serve hot turkey to everyone without putting myself under any real time crunch. I can relax and let dinner happen when it wants to happen. I'm starting with a 12-pound frozen turkey. Frozen turkeys are usually a lot cheaper, and it's usually easier to get the type and size that you want frozen. I think 12 pounds is the perfect size. It feeds a lot of people, but it's small enough that it cooks pretty quickly and evenly. I'm speed thawing by submerging the turkey in cool water from the sink. It's gonna float a little. You'll be fine as long as the breast side is facing down. The density of water sucks way more cold out of the meat than air can. That said, this is a pain compared to thawing something little like a steak in trickling water. That takes 20 minutes. This is gonna take 6 to 8 hours, at least an hour for every 2 pounds. And I'll have to change the water every half hour or so to keep it moving and to keep it from getting too cold. That's a lot of babysitting, and it really is a lot of water. If I had the time, I would just thaw it in the fridge, a day for every 4 or 5 pounds. Anyway, when it's thawed in the sink, you can move it back into the fridge for a day or so, or roast it straight away. I like to open up my turkey right in my roasting tray, A, because I have to open it somewhere and I don't want to have to clean another vessel, and B, I want all that juice in my gravy. There's no reason to waste it. Take the giblets out. That's the gizzard, the heart, no liver, WTF. There's the neck. All of that can just go on the bottom to flavor the gravy. I do like to score the legs, deep cuts straight down to the bone. This makes turkey legs so much more, frankly, edible. It helps them cook quicker, which softens them up, and it also severs some of those really stringy tendons and ligaments or whatever those are in there. It just makes the turkey leg edible. Enough pepper to coat the whole bird, same deal with salt, lots of salt, and then I'll go with the official dried herb combination of Thanksgiving, which is sage and thyme. Easy on the sage, it's very strong. Instant Thanksgiving flavor right there. You could use oil, but I actually think the ideal turkey roasting fat is clarified butter. I have a jar of ghee from my local Indian grocery. I'm going to use lots of it. This gets you a nice milky flavor compared to oil. You could use melted whole butter, but the milk solids would be likely to burn on the turkey or more likely down on the pan, which would hurt your gravy. Also, the water inside whole butter would make the skin a little bit gummy. All right, everything is smushed around. Don't forget about the underside. And this is when I will turn the burner under my roasting tray on medium heat and get my oven preheating to 350 Fahrenheit convection roast, if you've got it. And watch what happens on the burner. This brings a ton of heat right into the dark meat only because the dark meat is on the bottom. Speaking of which, I'll put a probe thermometer into the deepest part of the thigh right there, and a second probe into the deepest part of the breast. A dual probe thermometer is a nice thing to have at Thanksgiving. Some old carrots go into the pan. Gravy is a great usage of aromatic vegetables that are a little long in the tooth. Celery, a couple of white onions, just cut in half. If you cut the onions into smaller chunks than that, there's a good chance they're going to burn. And then I'll keep cooking it on the stovetop for at least 15 minutes or even a half hour if I have time. Just don't let anything burn. Play it safe with the heat. You smell something burning, that's burned flavor that's going to be in your gravy. In the oven it goes, and look, the breast is still refrigerator temperature, but the thigh is 144 Fahrenheit. It's almost cooked. This totally solves the problem of the white meat always being done before the dark meat. About an hour later, here's where I'm at. Breast is about 15 degrees from being done. Dark meat is getting quote-unquote overdone, which is how I think it's best. It's going to fall apart like barbecue. This is where I'll jack the temperature up to 500 to really brown the skin. 15 minutes later, breast is 162, past time to get it out of there. Witness the power of carryover heat. A couple minutes later, we're at 165, even though the bird's been out of the oven. That's heat that is stored in the outer layers of the meat, still working its way into the core, and you've got to account for that. 165 is the temperature that kills pathogens instantaneously. I consider it a little overcooked, though. If I'm in a situation where I don't need to play it really safe, I'll pull the turkey at 155 and let it coast to just 160. That'll be noticeably juicier. Here's how I get the turkey out of the pan. Use a metal spatula to make sure nothing is stuck to the bottom, then stick said spatula into the cavity and use a clean towel to hold the outside of the bird at the breast. Pick it up and drain whatever juice is in the cavity back into the pan. Since we pre-cooked the bottom, there actually probably won't be much juice in there. Now there's our gravy foundation. If you roast with the bird right on the bottom instead of up in a rack, and if you cover the rest of the tray surface with vegetables, you shouldn't need to add any water to this tray during cooking to keep your fond from burning. I want the contents of this tray as dry as possible. If you see lots of bubble-like objects floating around in there, that means you still have a lot of juice mixed in with the fat. At this point, I'll turn the burner on high to boil off as much of that water as possible. If you just use one hot burner instead of two, you can position the tray so that the part with the deep liquid is over the heat and the part that's drier will be off the heat and therefore will not burn. When the liquid in the pan seems to fizz more than boil, that means you've gotten most of the water out. You can reduce the heat to a bare simmer and mix some flour straight in to make a roux. This makes gravy so much easier. If you had tons of water in your pan drippings, you would need to skim off the fat or run it through a gravy separator to get some pure fat in which to brown your roux. By keeping your pan dry to begin with and boiling off the water, we can do everything right here in the tray without dirtying more dishes. Enough flour to make a thick paste is in, and I can see that the roux is starting to brown on the bottom there. If we still had a lot of water in the pan, that browning would not be possible, and the browning tastes good. But now we need to deglaze before it burns. In goes a carton of stock. Do it little by little, and it's easier to integrate into that thick paste. You also want to focus on scraping the fond off the bottom with a wooden spoon. This right here is why a stainless steel roasting tray is best if you can afford one. You can really see what you're doing. There's color contrast between the fond and the pan, unlike with those dark nonstick surfaces that are common on other usually cheaper pans these days. When you bring this to a boil, you can see how thick it's really going to be, and I can see that I've got enough thickener in there to handle another carton of stock easy. Again, doing it little by little, mostly just to make sure I don't surpass the thickening capacity of my roux. I like thick gravy. Hey, it's a skin thief. Get away. Look at how glossy that is. That's from the fat that we left in there, and the starch from the flour keeps it emulsified into the gravy. It will not split. I just let this sit and simmer for as much time as I've got to extract flavor and color from the solids. Make sure to pour in the resting juices from the turkey. And I don't worry about flour lumps or anything like that when I make my gravy because I strain it at the very end. Big bowl, sieve on top, just pour everything in. It's nice to have another person there to scrape the last bits out of the tray. Luckily, at Thanksgiving, there's usually a lot of people around to help. Then you just need to work the gravy through the sieve. Gentle smushing and it'll all go through, trust me. And there you go, smooth, squeaky clean gravy. Taste it for seasoning. I think that you want it a little too salty because its salinity will be diluted by the bland interior meat in most mouthfuls. Time to carve. Your best friend here is a giant cutting board. I've got one that's too big to fit in my dishwasher, so I don't use it very often, but it saves my life at Thanksgiving. You can absolutely do this with a normal chef's knife, but it's really nice to have one of these very long, thin carving knives. You'll see why. I cut the skin between the legs and the breast, and rather than negotiate the very complex anatomy in there with my knife, I just rip the leg quarters off like a caveman. Yes, the tissue right around the hip joint is still pink. It always will be, and it's fine. Do you remember how hot the thighs got? 180. And they were at pathogen-killing temperatures before we even put the turkey in the oven. We have pasteurized the crap out of anything in the lower regions of this bird. Forget the color. Now, to get the leg off of the thigh, I'll just cut down into that crook between them until I hit bone. Then I'll pry them apart to fully expose the joint. You can now easily see and cut through the little sinew connecting the joint. Do the same on the other leg quarter, cut to the bone, pry them apart. There's that little sinew. It should take no force at all to cut through it. Now let's turn to the breast there. I think that it makes no sense to carve slices straight off the carcass. Total pain. Way easier to start just to the side of the keel bone in the middle and lop off the entire breast. I don't care if I'm leaving behind a lot of meat on the carcass there. I will tear that off later and make leftovers pie with it. Whoops, spoiler alert. Same deal with the other breast. Take the carcass away, we'll pick the scraps off of it after dinner. My mom and I always do that together. With the breast off, we can look at the underside and observe the direction of the meat fibers. If you slice perpendicular to those, you will get noticeably more tender slices. And I like to slice very thin. I just like that texture. Or maybe I just like that it increases my gravy to meat ratio on the plate. The advantage of the long, thin carving knife is that it creates less drag on the meat and it allows you to use longer motions. There's less sawing back back and forth. This gets much cleaner cuts. And I'm making an effort to leave the slices up against each other, to keep each other warm and to prevent evaporation from their cut surfaces. The fact that I rested this bird uncovered for like an hour before slicing means that I can handle it easily. It is not burning me. And well-rested meat spills way less juice when it's cut. Okay, the thigh. Turkey thighs are big enough that you can slice meat off of them, but I prefer to tear chunks off with my hands. With your hands, you can feel what is meat and what is cartilage and other gross bits that you don't want. Then, once I've got all the chunks off, I will line them up and then cut them into bite-sized pieces. We're going against the grain like this, which is perfect. These chunks might not look pretty on the plate, but they are easy to eat. Here's another secret Thanksgiving weapon. This is an oven-safe decorative metal serving platter that we got at our wedding. Thanks, Faye. All the meat goes on there in big piles, again to discourage evaporation. Now, this whole thing can go back into the oven right before you want to eat, whenever that may be. Whenever your sides are ready, whenever the rest of your family shows up, there's just no urgency with this method. If you don't have a fancy platter, you could do the same on a sheet pan. And after 5 minutes in the oven, this meat is hot again, and it will stay hot on that now hot platter. I'll get myself some breast slices, some of those sticky falling apart dark meat hunks, and one of those delicious scored legs to gnaw Henry VIII style. Drench everything in gravy because simple roast turkey is a perfectly elegant binary system in which the meat provides the substance and the gravy provides the moisture and the flavor, and I'm thankful for that. And I'm also thankful for the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. Not only because they have been such stalwart patrons of my work here, but also because they gave me absolutely everything that I needed to make, host, and run my own professional website. I'm a busy person. I don't want to have to engage one company for design, another to register my custom domain, still another to host my site on a server somewhere, and still another to handle any e-commerce that I might want to do. I'm all about efficiency, both here in my kitchen and on my computer, and Squarespace is the efficient option. You won't need anything else. You just pick one of these beautiful templates optimized for just about any purpose your site could have. You throw in your own pictures and words, and as the Brits say, Bob's your uncle. Not the creepy uncle you only see at Thanksgiving, the good uncle who will give you 10% off your first site or domain registration when you use my link and code down in the description. Now, what do you do with all these leftovers? I'll give you one idea a week hence, when this trilogy of Thanksgiving recipe videos comes to its thrilling conclusion. Pew, 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 pew.